Hi there, good evening and welcome to This Is Ibrox. It's your Rangers podcast. It's your Wednesday warm-up. My name is Scott Patterson. If you're joining us across our social media YouTube channel tonight, then we appreciate your time. We're available right across social media on Twitter, X, of course, as known now, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. If you are watching us on our YouTube channel tonight, please like and share and subscribe. Comment if you like. Leave us a pleasant comment if you so please. We're always glad to hear what you've got to say about what we're doing each time we appear in front of your eyes a couple of times during the week. On tonight's pod, we look ahead to the Europa League Matchday 4 against AC Sparta Prague tomorrow at Ibrox. Lots to discuss. We talk about the transformation really in Scott Wright and John Lundstram, the importance of reaching another League Cup final, of course, in December. Two Player of the Match, Player of the Month rather, awards have been handed out this week to Rangers players. Seema getting the sort of big one, and Jack Butland getting the supporters one, which I think is quite exciting. We'll speak about that later on. We'll look ahead, as I say, to match day 4 tomorrow, and we will also cover a little bit as the pod progresses on the fans forum that occurred at Emerson House last night. Lots of juicy wee tidbits that came out of that yesterday. Joining me on the pod, and we will do it in order of age. Sorry, Jamie. Hi to Rhys Cochran. Hi, Rhys. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Scott. How are you?
Yes, very well. Good to have you on, as always.
Cheers, mate. Always a pleasure.
And JB from the Whirl is back. Hi, Jamie.
Good afternoon, lads. Yeah, looking forward to talking about Rangers. It's always nice on the back of another good week. So long may it continue tomorrow.
Listen, there's actually a lot more to discuss than what I thought. And listen, Kyle, who usually hosts, of course, the Wednesday warm-up, usually lets us into this wee on this day thing that he does. I've picked out 3 on this days, 8th of November. 1991 Rangers signed Dale Gordon. Now, Rhys, you will not remember him. JB, I suspect you might. Joined us from Norwich City for 1.2 million back in 1991. Won 2 leagues at Ibrox, a Scottish Cup and a Scottish League Cup, leaving in 1993 for a move to West Ham United. In 1997 on this day, Rangers beat Celtic 1-0 at Ibrox. A Richard Gough, what was kind of like a scuffed effort, I think, from just outside the 6-yard box. Brian Laudrup assist. One of the big memorable things for that afternoon was Andy Gorham making an incredible double save from Henrik Larsson. 2 headers, quick succession, 2 fantastic saves. And one more recently that you will definitely remember, Rhys, I'm sure. On the 55 season, on this day in 2020, we beat Hamilton 8-0 at Ibrox. James Tavernier scored 2, Aribo got 2, Roof scored 2, Arfield, and the last scorer, any idea?
Zunga?
Oh, it's a good guess. It's not right, but I nearly went Roy Walker there on you, but it's a good guess, but it's not right. Brandon Barker was the other scorer that afternoon. Brandon Barker, remember him? Goodness me. So yeah, that's our on this days for on this time, 8th of November, and the recent past. Rangers progressed to the Scottish League Cup at the weekend with a 3-0 victory over Hearts at the weekend. Big Sunday right before Christmas, which should be quite exciting. We look forward to that. JB, I think Clement coming in, we've seen a step up, and you always see a new manager bounce. Listen, the reality is we've seen it with Michael Beale when he came in after Gio departed. There is a bounce. I want to speak to you about Scott Wright and John Lundstram in that order. Scott Wright came off the bench, obviously, in the game at the weekend and completely changed it in Rangers' favour. I've not long said to you before we started tonight, I'm not sure if Todd Cantwell comes out after half-time, that Rangers look as comfortable as what they did in the second half. Is that fair?
Yeah, no, I think it is. I think if we're talking about the difference between playing ability between Cantwell and Wright, then I think that's a bit of a no-brainer. We know where we are with that. But in terms of maybe what the game needed on the day, really pleased the fact that Clement seen something that none of us seen, which is always pleasing, because I think, Matt, that certainly under Gio and Michael Beale recently, everything felt very predictable. So it was almost of a case of you could see the next move coming. You could almost set your watch by it in certain times as well. But I think with the manager, he's whether because he hasn't got that emotive connection that we kind of thrive for, he almost looks at things maybe in a wee bit more black and white. So if he's seeing a gap or an opportunity to get in behind, then he executes, takes out the emotion. I think if Cantwell had came up, I mean, my first reaction was Cantwell must be carrying a knock. Not for a second I think Scott Wright was coming on as a tactical change. We kind of didn't learn that until a wee bit later on. Obviously, Cantwell had been booked, and it did feel like one of them afternoons where any time the Hearts player went down, he was giving everything. Again, not complaining, no conspiracies or anything like that here, but it was just one of them games where everything kind of felt as if it was going against us. Cantwell's yellow card was ridiculous. So if one of them came up again, another opportunity, then it would have been a much more difficult game with 10 men. But no, fair play to Scott Wright. No doubt we're going to go into a wee bit more detail in terms of what we think of him and what he's done for the club so far since he arrived. But certainly on Sunday, he ticked the box. He came on, he made an impact, and fair play to him. He's definitely turned things around over the last week or so.
Reece, he's playing under his fourth manager at the club, obviously. Gerrard, Van Bronckhorst, Beale, and now Clement. You could argue, of course, Stephen Davis in there in the middle in some way, shape or form. He strikes me as he's a classic winger, confidence player. I think if you're playing him in a position that he's familiar with, which clearly is going to be on that right wing, you will get a shift from him. Now, whether he's the sort of guy who you're going to rely on as a starter regularly, I think that's a different debate, and we could probably have a podcast ourselves on quite a few of the current members of the squad in that, frankly. But I think if you're bringing him on and he's having the clear impact that he did on Sunday past, he's a good person to have in and around the squad, considering, do you know what I mean? We go back 2.5, 3 months, he was speaking about his departure to Turkey almost.
Aye, definitely. I really like Scott Wright. Personally, I know he gets a lot of stick. Perhaps it's because he's get this foreign name. I know there's that cliche in football that Allardyce-Iola and all that, right? But if Scott Wright was foreign, I reckon he'd get more praise. If he'd been brought in for 5 million for a Spanish La Liga team, he would be regarded a lot higher. I like how he's really good at carrying the ball. See, progressing the ball up the field, but it's not the kind of progression that Kent would have, where it was carrying it very horizontally across the park and not getting anywhere, and then passing it to Lundstram. Right, he'll beat his man, he'll take somebody on, he's got that wee turn of pace to turn you the other way and get by you and play a pass. I think he's really effective for us, and it showed on Sunday that he was magnificent in turning the game around, and he'll be a big miss tomorrow.
Do you think Reece is someone that Clement is maybe... Obviously, we know all the players are effectively starting with a clean slate, brand new white page, as he said when he arrived. I do wonder if you feel that he's someone that maybe applies to that little bit more because of he does get a tough time. He can't feel but hear it. I think that he was used pretty poorly under the previous regime. There was games that I think it was one of Beale's last games. He was almost playing as a defensive mid at parts for no real obvious reason. I wonder, Reece, do you think it's someone that Clement will maybe see as, right, you can play right winger, you've got an opportunity to earn that jersey and be my sort of first choice in that position?
So quite controversially, I actually don't mind Scott Wright in the middle of the park. Not as a defensive midfielder, absolutely not. But see, just that ability to turn and beat a man, I think where it possibly stops the horseshoe if it's happening. That famous horseshoe we've seen under Gio. If you've got the ability to spin somebody inside and make something happen in there, I don't mind that at all, but I definitely think he's going to be effective under Clement, and at the moment we don't have any better options out wide. We showed earlier in the season playing without wingers really didn't help us. So if we need players out wide, then he's certainly somebody that can do it, and if called upon, he can play in that almost Cantwell role as well, where he maybe floats inside and makes something happen.
JB Paul makes a really good point via our YouTube channel. Hi Paul, good evening, thanks for joining us. Would Wright be getting his chance if Sima and Rabbi Matondo were both playing together? Of course, Clement commented today that Matondo is, I think, just on the verge of getting back onto the pitch. From a training perspective, I don't think you'll see him much before the start of December, to be honest with you. But it's a fair point, you know what I mean? The obvious argument is Wright only getting his chance because things seem so threadbare in the squad as it stands just now.
Yeah, but how many times does that happen? Do you know what I mean? As you go play, some players have made careers. Calvin Bassey, probably a perfect example. By the way, I'm not saying we're going to pump Scott Wright for 27 million in the summer, but he's someone that has he's taken his chance. And as you touched on there, Clement touched on it. Everyone's getting a white sheet, so why can't he take the chance? It would be an interesting three to have him behind Danilo if the three of them were fitting at the same time. One thing I think we've lacked over the years is pace. People to move at pace. I suppose my only negative on Scott Wright, and I know everything's super positive, but in his 88 appearances, 5 assists. So for someone that was saying can play in a number 10 role and someone who is traditionally a winger, you'd want more. Do you know what I mean? I'm not saying, don't get me wrong, that's 88. That's not 88 full 90 minutes. But he's probably been coming on a majority of his time when the game's either already won or we need a goal. So he's probably coming on when players are tired. I think his final ball is probably where it lets him down, his decision making. If he has too much time to think, I think he struggles. I was at a pre-season game at Blackpool a couple of years ago, and I was right on the behind the sponsor board, and he beat 3 men down the wing, and there was nobody in the box because he was that quick. Anyway, he just put it in. So I've given him one of them. For fuck's sake, what are you doing? And it's fair play to me. He turned down and he said, "It's easy from behind the board, mate." And I was laughing like he had a smile on his face, which I thought was quite good, bit of tongue in cheek. But yeah, I mean, he shows glimpses, doesn't he? I mean, you forget some of the big goals he has been involved in. Obviously, his layoff for Glenn Kamara will always be in folklore when you look back in 10, 20, 30, 40 years' time. That's one of the best ever goals at Ibrox, certainly one of the best atmospheres. And he was heavily involved in that. He started the European Cup final for the club. My big thing is if he got released, where would he end up? And that's, I sometimes judge a player by that standard. Would he join a club better than Rangers? No chance. Would he end up in some minnow in Turkey potentially? So again, good on him. Like if the manager can get something out of him, as you touched on earlier, 4 managers haven't been able to get any type of consistency out of him. But no, wish him well. As I say, he might be one of these players that plays well if the rest of the team are playing well. And if you go through some of our title-winning teams back in the going through the 90s, there was some average players who've walked away with 3-4 league title winners medals. You touched on earlier, the boy that went to Norwich, Dale Gordon. He was very had lots of promise when he was young, but wasn't particularly spectacular, but probably walked away with a couple of league medals and a couple of cups. But he was in a good win side. So you just don't know if we can get everything playing well. He's definitely got the tools. It's just whether he's got the final ball for me. But no, fair play to him.
Do you know, you're absolutely right on players maybe not being up to the quality of those around them, but just being there and contributing however much that is over a period of time. I mentioned earlier on in this day in 1997, Rangers beat Celtic 1-0. The left back for Rangers that day in 1997 was Alex Cleland, who I'm sure would probably be the first to admit that a lot of the medals that he's claimed for his time at Rangers was due to guys that were playing around him, your Marco Negris, your Laudrups. Do you know what I mean? That afternoon, Rangers had Gascoigne, Jonas Tern and Stuart McCall playing in the middle of the pitch. So with the best will in the world, Cleland was never up to any of those standards. But it speaks to your point. And it's easy to forget as well that, you know, these guys need a chance. I look at Ross McCausland, who's had his chance recently, and I felt when he's been involved, he's looked quite busy. Then you think Scott Wright's been involved. He was linked with Preston and some mob in Turkey in the summer. Is he stunting that progression for Ross McCausland? I know he was openly spoke about by Craig Robertson, spoke about with the fans forum yesterday, which we'll get to a little later on. But the suggestion was that McCausland probably would have went out on loan this season. But the fact he's not done that it gives him the opportunity to be in and around the first team race. I know you're laughing because you had almost had a very similar conversation with my professor a couple of weeks ago, didn't you?
It was the presser for the Greenock Morton Cup game.
Yeah.
I was, and the whole time I was contemplating asking him whether or not the loan rumours had been true or not, and then lo and behold, later that week he came into my work just with his partner, and I'd said to him at the time, I was like, "Oh, I nearly asked you about the loan rumours," and I think he was pretty glad that I didn't. It was his first press conference, so it might have been a bit harsh on the boy.
Yeah, as I say, we just have to be careful that we need to be careful that the youth are getting the chance. And I think Clermont is clever enough and he's shrewd enough to give youth a chance if they're good enough. We just have to make sure we've got players in the squad that are playing well enough in the first instance, and if they play well enough, McCausland will absolutely get his chance. Whether that's over Wright in current form, I think is maybe up for debate. Listen, I'll be really interested to see if we do see a four up front of Danilo and then Matondo, Sima and Wright, because it screams pace, it screams creativity, and it would be quite an exciting sort of front four to watch. JB, I want to come to you. John Lundstram, he got interviewed post-match after the game at the weekend, and the glaring post-match comment that he made, of course, was the mood being so much better, to quote him, in the changing room where he was asked about the impact that Philippe Clement had made since he arrived. For someone who was maybe branded as Beale's boy by not necessarily ourselves, but just generally, I think everyone expected him to be in and around based on the fact that he was there with Gerrard and Beale before. It's quite a damning sort of verdict on the guys that have been previously, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a bit of an opinion. As you know, Scott, we spoke offline. I've got on a couple of bits in terms of Beale's behaviours and whatsoever, but it very much feels as if any of the players that were there prior to Beale, that were there first time round with Beale, I've came across a very different Michael Beale. Alfredo Morelos, Kent, Kamara, these boys weren't rushing to stay round. Do you know what I mean? There was a chance that they could have revitalised their Rangers career or rejuvenated it. And then you add John Lundstram into the mix as well in terms of hasn't spoke particularly highly of him. Leon Balogun had a bit of a dig. I don't know if I'm reading too much into that in terms of his comments, in terms of he felt as if he was just out in the cold, wasn't even making matchday squads. So you just wonder whether maybe, I think I might have said this in one of the other pods, it's never easy going from working alongside people as kind of peers to then stepping into management people. I've done it myself, and it is difficult. So you just wonder whether that transition was maybe a wee bit too much. When Michael Beale did leave, I didn't see an avalanche of players wishing him well, which tends to be the thing on Instagram. I know there was Cantwell did wish him well, and it sounds like they had a really good relationship, and Cantwell spoke really, really well and really highly of him. I thought it was quite damning the amount of people that are making the comment around everybody feels involved now. That was something that I remember Mark Warburton was massive on. Gerrard overemphasised that. And I mean, Butland even said it today in the presser, that it was almost the case of, the players who've been injured feel part of it now, whereas maybe they didn't before. Again, I was going to say something that I shouldn't have, but the mood is just a lot more better. I think jumping back to Lundstram now in terms of his form, with a bit of luck, well, the manager said he's watched every game, and John Lundstram can't make 5-yard passes. Do you know what I mean? If John Lundstram can't take more than 2 or 3 touches, and then make an easy ball out wide, his game is all about doing things quickly, aggressively, direct. And we've seen it. I mean, he made a run on Sunday afternoon. He made a full sprint down the left wing, and no one was stopping him, and I wouldn't have fancied getting in his way. But he's turned again, another one that's turned it around. I think we know he's got the ability there, and we'll just watch this space.
Do you know, it's funny you say that about the run up the left wing. I was watching the game at the weekend, and I was watching it from abroad, if you understand what I'm saying. But what I did think was that the feed that I was watching was almost catching up with itself, because I've never seen John Lundstram burst into such a huge degree of pace to sort of chase down. I like John Lundstram. I'm a fan of his. I like the job that he does in the middle of the pitch. I sometimes think he's guilty of maybe overcomplicating things a little bit. A lot depends on who plays beside John Lundstram in that duo. If you've got a certain player playing beside him, he'll be fine. If there's someone that he maybe looks like he has to do a bit more work, I think the pressure's instantly on him, and I don't think he deals with that properly. However, we speak about new manager bounces, as saying players again, that blank white sheet. I think Lundstram's a prime example. He's been excellent since the new gaffer came in.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like he's got that confidence about himself again. He seems to have the freedom that it's all right if I do drive forward and I do bust, I got to get forward because I'm trying to make something happen without fearing all that's going on behind them. I think possibly Leon Balogun maybe helps with that as well. Balogun's recovery pace, I think, can be quite underrated, especially at his age. And just having that almost like safety net behind you that, these two are pretty reassured. So if I go, and I think probably the prime example for him to play with would be Ryan Jack. When Ryan Jack sits, they two have probably got that understanding and experience of playing with each other that he just feels a lot more freedom to kick on. And I don't think John Lundstram's ever been a defensive midfielder.
No.
I think, if anything, he's probably somebody who helps you transition from defence into attack at best.
There's something that rings in my mind, JB. You'll know this because you're from that neck of the woods. Did Lundstram not start off as a winger when he was at Everton?
Yeah, no, I honestly thought when he came up the road, I thought that's where he was going to play. Was going to be that almost like aggressive box to box from the right hand side, if that makes sense. Because he can whip a ball. There's no doubt about that. And Sheffield United, when he had that good season, was all about coming in from the right. He was a fantasy football manager's dream. I don't know if anyone remembers, but I think he was like 4 million or something at the time, and then he hit like really good points and stuff. But yeah, he you just say what's he good at? He's strong, he's quick, he's direct, and he can ping a ball. And what's he not very good at is probably the easier side of the game, which is obviously keeping possession, and things like that. So yeah, no, I would like to see him in that right hand side position. I mean, if I put him in the Scott Wright, if John Lundstram played the same amount of minutes as Scott Wright in an offensive position, I promise you'd have more goals and assists.
Do you know, Bluebells are blue comments, and the big comment, the big statement in there for me, and I think it ties in with what you've just said, Jamie, is Clement has him playing fast and direct football, playing right into his strength. So he doesn't have to think about what's going on behind him. The encouragement is for him to look ahead. None of the shitey lateral stuff as we've been had to listen to. Listen, I think he's one of the big success stories since Clement comes in. I think he's someone who's been given an absolute doing regularly. Sometimes deserved, let's be honest. Sometimes it hasn't been good enough. However, since new bosses came in, I think he's been really quite impressive.
He was also the Wirral Ranger Player of the Year for last for 2022, which we make Doddsy reminds me on a regular basis when he has been performing. But he's back to being the best on earth again, so we're all right.
Absolutely. Belinda Carlisle CDs at the ready. She thing in the 90s or 80s, if you remember that, sure.
Sorry, I remember playing it on Apple Music and going, who's that?
Listen, I just want to get very, very quickly. We're obviously now into the Scottish League Cup final. Reece, I'll come to you first. First opportunity to win it, and north of 10 years now, I think. And indeed, the absolute chance to get the trophy that we've not won yet since we came back in the top league. It's really important that we finish the year with that trophy. Certainly finish pre-Christmas with that trophy.
Definitely. I think I wouldn't say it's happened yet, but there's potential for a momentum shift. I think we've seen that the standard across the city isn't as high as it's been. It's certainly not as relentless as it's been, where it's just a foregone conclusion. There's been points dropped, and there's times where you're looking at results going, they couldn't drop points here, could they? And you seen it a couple of years ago when we had that transition period for Gerrard to Gio. Postecoglou won the League Cup. We were out it by, I think, St Mirren or someone.
Yeah.
But it semi-final, wasn't it?
Oh, so it was.
Martin Boyle masterclass.
So
David McCallum game, wasn't it?
Do you know, I think that possibly signalled a bit of a shift. Definitely instilled belief in their players and their system, because they were a far cry from the team they were towards the end of that season. Because that was even before they brought in the four. I think they brought in 4 players in January, and they bottled it for the Old Firm. And it did signal a huge momentum shift. And I think especially in this final, anybody that watched the semi and the Saturday knows we're playing the weaker team that won. The weaker team won the other semi-final, so for me, it's an absolute no-brainer that we need to win it.
Yeah. And listen, absolutely right, JB. I know you'll want us to win before Christmas, but Paul has brought up something that we didn't cover in the agenda before we came on. But I'm really keen to get your take on this, because anyone that doesn't know, Jamie obviously runs the sort of World Rangers Supporters Club out of Liverpool, and has to have this discussion on tickets with huge degree of regularity. And Paul brings up the fact that the Sheep, who I assume he means Aberdeen, are looking for a 50-50 split for the final, and he refers to it as being a joke. JB, just for anyone looking in, for someone who runs a supporters club, how difficult is it to get any sort of tickets for occasions like this?
Yeah, I was just hoping one of us wasn't nicknamed the Sheep then, but yeah, there you go. It's a logistical nightmare when it certainly comes to obviously these big games, especially as soon as you start to get into semi-final and final territory. Applications, you're looking at, certainly unless you're a really well-established supporters club like the Glaswegian or and even them guys really struggle. The Glaswegian take buses all over Europe, and fantastic support that they give the club. Even these guys don't get tickets by the mass. Do you know what I mean? So I think in terms of ourselves, it's almost a case of it's scraps. Honest to God, it's scraps. So don't get me wrong, if you're well set up, which you've got to be now through obviously the MyJers and the CCS and stuff, then that's going to be kind of your only avenue for tickets. Not many people are willing to give up semi-final and final tickets, believe it or not. So yeah, really difficult. And I think in terms of obviously the question there that Paul's raised, the 50-50 split it's a ridiculous ask in terms of them guys. You've only got to look at the pictures that came through from the semi-finals. I'd like to think the SFA or SPFL, whoever it is that dishes the tickets out, should just be showing them a mirror, showing them a photograph of the ground and going, that's why you're not getting it. I mean, even if you look at Pittodrie, when they've had big European games in there in recent years, the Rangers and Celtic have come to town, and it's embarrassing for Sky cameras. There's a boy I used to work with, and I wind him up like it's a fancy dress season again. It's always people dressed in red suits. So it's almost like a case of you should get what you deserve. However, I'm sick of having this conversation every single year. Surely we can decide on this pre-season. Does it go to a vote, and then maybe you say to the clubs, right, you've got like 10 days to sell your full allocation. If you haven't sold it by then an extra 10%, 20% are going to go to the old firm, because that's what, at the end of the day, we're the only two that are going to, we could fill that stadium 2-3 times over if we wanted to at the moment. So yeah, it's a frustrating one, I think, but it's not very often common sense prevails in Scotland, but this one does feel like, and it wouldn't surprise me if more tickets arrive once they send some more back. If obviously the police can steward that correctly, because the last thing you want to see is obviously the St Andrews flag in the background of a cup final. It's a bit of a redneck for everyone involved, really.
Do you know, I think it surprised me as well is that I think at last count that they're effectively getting about north of 19,000 tickets, which I don't think I'm entirely convinced that they're going to sell 19,000 tickets, to be brutal. I saw Scott Cameron, sort of friend of the podcast, say something very similar on Twitter earlier on this afternoon. There's a real debate over whether 19,000 is too much, and I completely agree with you, Jamie. We can't have these matches at the National Stadium and seats are empty. It can't happen. These games are on the telly. You can watch them all around the world, and it would be easy to mistake that you were just watching a standard game that was 3 points to play for and nothing much else. So I think it's really important that the powers that be get their act together and just decide on the right way. How do they want the game to be portrayed? It's a showcase. What do you want to do? What do you expect? What do you want your national stadium to look like when there's any team lifting a trophy for what it's worth? Do you know, if it was an Edinburgh derby, do you know what I mean? Have it at Murrayfield, pack out Murrayfield. Don't have punters coming across for Edinburgh to leave space in the ground. It's absolutely bonkers. Reece, sorry, you were going to say something there.
No, I was saying definitely with regards to the Murrayfield Edinburgh Derby thing. JB, I seen on Twitter earlier that I think Aberdeen might have proposed that to the SFA. So I think they probably deserve a wee bit more credit here than what they're getting, because Aberdeen supposedly
give them nothing, Reece. Give them nothing.
Aberdeen supposedly proposed to the SFA, look, keep it 50-50, hold back tickets, what we don't sell Rangers can have. And the SFA have probably overruled it and went, no, we're not even giving you that opportunity. But then again, it's the SFA, isn't it?
I think it should, as I said, it should be agreed at the start of the season. And not being funny, if you're a supporter of one of these minnows, then you should. If the message is all season ticket holders, for example, if you can make it to a semi-final and final, guaranteed a ticket, you've got to take Rangers and Celtic out of the equation. You can't treat them the same because they're not. Do you know what I mean? So as much as that might piss non-Rangers and Celtic fans off, we're not the same. We're beasts in comparison. Yeah. So if you say to them every season ticket's guaranteed a ticket for a semi-final and final, buy a season ticket, and then that's how you guarantee a final. I've had to buy a season ticket to make sure that I can make semi-finals and finals. Do you know what I mean? So I don't see why they should be any different.
Absolutely. Listen, Reece, Bluebells are blue he's basically, so you're right. You're bumped. Ultimately, he knows the score. You try to us to go soft on Aberdeen. Nah, can't happen. Will not happen.
To be fair though, I do agree with JB. That might incentivise more season tickets as well. Plus, I would be surprised, I wouldn't be surprised with the SFA to retreat my comments that they don't just say that at the start of the season. Like, look, get these other clubs together and go, a semi-final is your opportunity to display what could be your predicted allocation for a final. And Aberdeen's one, I believe they didn't sell 14,000, so you might be right in that one, Scott.
Do you know, and listen, Paul is back in with some really, really common sense. Based on average gate attendance, I genuinely don't see why they don't do that anyway. I think it makes it's common sense. It's peak Scottish football, though, let's be perfectly honest. It's why we love it. It's why we're here. Reece, I'm going to stick with you. Abdallah Sima gets Player of the Month for October. He has had quite a good month, you have to say.
Yeah, he has. He's been effective every time he's come on. I think he's been probably our main goal threat while Danilo's been out.
Yeah.
And he's starting to prove why, Brighton maybe paid that money for him. A lot of people, when he came, just kind of took it for granted that Brighton never miss. He's a Brighton player. He's going to be a world beater. He'll take the league. And he's maybe just had to take that wee adaptation period. First 2 months he's done that, and definitely this month, Jack Butland aside, I think he's been more than deserving to be the Player of the Month, and quite fitting that Butland get the supporters one as well.
Yeah, and listen, entirely fair. Jamie, I wonder where you stand on Sima. I think when he came in, and I do still think we see some instances where that first touch is a bit debatable from him. He strikes me as being one of these guys whose mind is too quick for his physicality, almost. But I like him. I have to say, I like him. You can see why Brighton have forked out decent cash for him previously. It's probably disappointing that we don't have anything in there from a clause perspective to say that if all things go well and we're all happy come the end of the season that he can stay. So it's a shame that we're not going to have that opportunity unless we drag Brighton up to the table and talk finance with them come the end of the season.
I mean, let's be honest. From a loan project perspective, what an opportunity for Brighton and the player. Do you know what I mean? To come up and play in front of a demanding atmosphere, European nights, both home and away, and the expectation that player needs to play under. He can only leave. You'd like to think a better man. Do you know what I mean? It sounds a bit dramatic, but he's obviously still a young lad. He was the one through all the signings. He was the one I was probably most excited about, because I remember watching him when we came up against him in Prague, and I thought he's ran us absolutely ragged over both legs. And I remember thinking, bloody hell, I wonder, he's one to keep an eye on. Then he went to Brighton, and then obviously never really kicked on with a couple of injuries. He was in France, and then he was in Stoke, where he picked up quite a bad injury, and obviously things never kicked on for him. But after going from what I can only describe as the worst ever performance at a 45 minutes in a Rangers shirt against PSV, I remember being in the club now and saying to the lads, this is the worst I've ever seen anyone perform. And the next thing, obviously, top bins. I think what we've got to all just accept with him, he'll try and try and try. It mightn't always come off, but if it was coming off every time, he wouldn't be with us. Do you know what I mean? So I think we've just got to work him, support him, get behind him, which isn't always easy, obviously under the pressure that we're under, but he's definitely proven to be an asset. He gives us so many different options as well. So he gives us that bit more physicality. He wins a hell of a lot defensively. Sometimes that goes unnoticed, but he's not scared to put his head in where it hurts. And he's also, I love players that can get us up the pitch. There was one, I think there was another one. Did he draw a booking out of the right back on Sunday? Where there was nothing on and he just got his head down and motored towards the corner flag, and lo and behold, they pulled him down. I'm kind of still waiting for him to. I think he could destroy someone one day. You know, I'd like to see him a bit more central. We'll only do that once, obviously, everybody's back fit. But once you get the likes of Lawrence and Cantwell, is there any reason why he couldn't play in behind Danilo with a view for him to then arriving as that extra man in the box? I think that would be some combination if we could get something like that going. So, but yeah, no, fair play to him. He's kicked on, and hopefully he leads us to some success towards the end of the season. But he's so far so good. He's definitely getting the pass marks.
Reece, Jack Butland has largely been sort of, I think, universally accepted as the best signing so far that came in the summer. Was voted today, confirmed today, as sort of supporters player of the month for October. I've said before, and I said it on Twitter during the week, we're very lucky to have always had big, huge, reliable goalkeepers that you can rely on at big moments. At 1-0 at the weekend, Jack Butland, big save, keeps in the game, and before you know it, it's 2-0 and then 3-0 in quick succession. He's a super, super goalkeeper and a more than able replacement for the great Alan McGregor.
Definitely, I think Butland's probably best exemplified in how good he is. Going back to the example JB used with Scott Wright, if he was released, where would he end up?
Yeah.
Now that's something to think about, and I think he's definitely one of these keepers that could play at most levels. It's quite good as well that he seems quite mentally resilient, and that he's not always called upon, but he's there when you need him, and when he's there, he's doing absolutely superb. And he's played in a variety of teams as well, which probably means that we've got him at the best point in his career. He's played for the likes of Man United, where he's had to just be that alert, and he's probably playing a ball-dominant team at times and not really expected to do much. When he is called upon, he's got to be there. Whereas he's played at Crystal Palace and Stoke in the Championship, that he's facing a barrage of shots. So I think we've maybe got him at quite a good time, where he's matured, he's able to maybe deal with pressure more, he's more expectant of it, and what a signing he's been so far. I always remember growing up, and that was something my dad always said, was Rangers have always had a good goalkeeper. And it's only now looking back at it, you go, well, aye, you notice it.
Yeah. No, listen, you're absolutely right. I think we've always been lucky to have. I've certainly always been lucky enough, and I'm sort of older than you, certainly, Reece, as we know. I've always seen good goalkeepers at Rangers: Woods, Gorham, Kloss, McGregor, Butland. Now, I mean, there's been goalkeepers in there who have been involved for short periods of time, who I think have also done us a turn. Neil Alexander is one that jumps in. I'm not suggesting that Neil Alexander was as good as these, but at the time, it's easy to forget, took us to Manchester. Do you know what I mean? So we've always been blessed with having good quality goalkeepers in there, and Butland is absolutely filling that void. And I think it's quite fair to say you could argue McGregor's season last season was one too many. Not for discussion in the podcast. It's the void that you have to fill. You come into the Rangers goalkeeper, you need to be how many times did you go to Ibrox and you'd see McGregor shouting at Sasa Papac or coming running off his line to have a go at someone else. And I know what you're thinking about, by the way, when I'm speaking about Alan McGregor, Reece, I know exactly what you're thinking about. But
there is that.
To be that voice in the background is really, really important. And I think it's easy to underestimate just what a big player and a big influence indeed he'll be in and around the changing room. JB was in for the press conference today. A couple of quotes that I've picked off. One thing he said, the club has a soft spot for goalkeepers, as there's been some incredible goalkeepers here in the past. He feels he's got a long way to go before he fills these shoes. So he obviously feels that while he's pleased to be mentioned in the same breath as these guys, he's looking for some pocket full of medals to back up that with. So, which I understand. He also said today in the presser, we don't fear anyone, which was the club is all about. He's in a period in his life where he's played the most games sequentially since about 2019, I think I've seen. So he did have sort of 2, 3, 4 years of, as you say, restart being alert. But JB, I just wonder how he's arrived. He seems to be, going by the way that the fans are singing about him, he's universally loved right across the support. He's really important for me just now.
He is. Without using the word revolution, it's almost a case of you need somebody to kind of spark that. And he just ticks all the boxes in terms of what you want from not just a Rangers goalkeeper, a goalkeeper in general. He seems to be strong. He's commanding. He's really good with both feet, which I didn't know. He doesn't half belt it. That was one of the challenges with McGregor all through his career, really, but certainly over the last few years, some of his kicking was awful. And you know what I mean? Whereas if Butland's kicking it, the ball stays hit like. I've seen him ping them to the opposition goalie before now and stuff. So he just gives you that real level of calmness, even when players. I remember being in Servette away early in the first half, and their big centre forward went 1-on-1. I was like, you have to do well to beat Butland here. And lo and behold, Butland's down, and what a save that he made. I think it was to his right-hand side. But he's I don't think we could ask for too much more. He was another one that I was really pleased of in the summer. But again, didn't want to shout it too loudly, because how can you be really pleased with someone that hasn't played a lot of football the previous couple of years? But he's come in. I love the way he talks in his presses as well. He gives me a bit of the Jermaine Defoe's in terms of this guy's gone to the Premier League, he's done it. And it doesn't feel, it's not sound bites. Do you know what I mean? You can tell he's well media trained, don't get me wrong, but he almost talks as if he talks with a real determination. And I can see why. I can see why the management team and the players have taken to him so well. He's all in as well, by all accounts. So he's not one. I'm sure I heard or read earlier that the full family's moved up. So we've got a young family. They've all moved up to Scotland. So this isn't I'm leaving the family down south. I'm just going to go play my football and come home. He's bought into Scotland as well, which I think is really important, certainly for somebody at his age. And I dare say it's going to take a hell of a lot of money for anybody to take him away from us now, which is a good position to be in, as much as we mightn't like to say it. He's definitely one that is now an asset at the club. I was worried a few weeks back even. I was looking around that squad and going, have we got many assets, saleable assets? But you fast forward a couple of weeks, players playing well with confidence, and all of a sudden things, and I think, I know it came up on one of the comments from midweek, this team now feels relatable. And what I mean by that is, if you genuinely feel as if we have a go as fans, they're going to have a go. And that's all that we ask sometimes. If I like to think Rangers fans are really realistic, as demanding as we are. If we think the players are having a right good go, but it's just not happening, we just don't get the rub of the green. If you take that, the goal where the 1-0, I can't remember, it was the semi-final, League Cup final, now it's thrown me, where Julian scored the offside goal. It was almost a case of the players gave it their all, and we dominated the game. We played really well, created chances, we missed the penalty, and we never won on the day. As much as we were disappointed, we kind of accepted it, because it was almost a case of, we're getting there. You can see they're giving it a good go, and guys like Butland kind of sum that up for me at the moment. So yeah, another one that we long may continue.
Do you know, the one thing I really like about Butland so far is the one thing that we use as supporters a lot is that he gets it. And the slight difference, I think, with Butland is that he seems to, he obviously gets it, the fact he's playing for a huge club. I love the way that he speaks about it. I thought he almost understands the identity of the football club, and you could argue that's maybe a fancier way of saying he gets it, but you can see it means a lot to him. I think he understands that maybe since 2019 to the summer past, he's been in and out of relative obscurity. A really good goalkeeper to not be playing football, by the way. A really good goalkeeper to not be playing. And there's no doubt the Rangers have taken a punt on him a little bit, bringing him up in the summer. But it's absolutely worked for us. One of the other things he said today, which I don't want to trot by, and it speaks to the John Lundstram point we made at the start of the podcast when we spoke about the sort of previous regime. One of the things he said, which I thought was quite interesting, was the manager has simplified things for us, which points to maybe a bit of confusion and over-egging things with the previous guys, which is maybe unfair, but I think there's enough murmurs now that are coming out to suggest that things were not all right. Reece, we look forward to AC Sparta Prague coming to Ibrox tomorrow night, Matchday 4 of the Europa League. I'm going to run through some tidbits that we got from the gaffer today in his press conference. Kemar Roof is available for selection, but we'll probably only get 5 to 10 minute stops, barely a run out, to be perfectly honest with you, suggesting we are limited with the squad. Raskin and Shooter look like they're out until post-international break. He commented, interestingly enough, on his love for European nights, and he's hoping for a positive evening and reaction. We do European nights really well. I think it's important we stay for the 90, support the team for the 90, and make sure we give them 90 minutes of absolute madness on Thursday night, frankly. He believes we'll need the highest level to win. Commented on Scott Wright, of course, being a doubt for tomorrow, which I think we all know, but the big quote that I think we got today from him, which is something that should excite us all as supporters of the football club: I want to create a machine who goes for everything. He obviously sees that there's lots to work with and there's lots to do, but I think importantly, Reece, is he sees that he can do it with the guys that are in there just now, and he will support that with new additions in the not too distant future. But all the signs, as things stand just now, are really quite promising.
It's a sign of a really good coach, I think, Scott. Somebody who's able to get the best out of what they've got. Well, it's easy for anybody to come in and just demand higher quality of players and go, this isn't good enough, that's not good enough, that's not right, I want somebody in there. Yeah. But it's how do you make that better? And I think that's what he's done really well. With regards to simplifying things, I don't think it would be, if it happened in the dressing room or in the training part, the only place that they over-communicated things, but it's been a real breath of fresh air, and he seems to have just brought this simplicity, and I love his resilience. See, even with the press, he's just able to go, no, I just want to win the next game.
Yeah.
He's so steadfast in that belief and reinforces it that much to the point where he's literally saying to somebody, I'll say to you again, I just want to win the next game. Yeah. And it's that ability to develop people and just simplify things and concentrate their minds on what they need to focus on, which is the next game. Because it's all right looking at maybe the League Cup final in a few weeks and players going, I really want to start that, I really want to play that. But if you lose 3 games before it, you've got less of a chance of winning that League Cup final.
Yeah. No, listen, you're absolutely right. You could argue it's sound bites, which we get, and you always get that sort of stuff when new managers come in. I just like the way he's speaking. I've said previously, I don't want to say he's close to Walter Smith in the sense that, because that puts a huge amount of pressure on the guy, which I get. But Walter Smith was the last sort of Rangers football manager that I think we all sort of associated with. He was, do you know what I mean? He was just a guy that carried himself. He had gravitas. He was the man. Clement carries himself in a similar sort of fashion. Now, obviously, we want him to win trophies to back that up. Of course, we do. There's a similarity there, and I find it hard to maybe properly. He just strikes me as being a really good, adequate football manager, JB, and I'm not portraying that properly, but there's an aura about him that I don't think we've seen with Van Bronckhorst, and we've certainly never seen it with Michael Beale.
Yeah, no, I think you could probably add Gerrard and Alex McLeish into the mix in terms of the character, in terms of the, you genuinely, they would rather have been on the pitch kicking the ball. Do you know what I mean? If somebody needed to get the ball over the line, both of them probably would have done it for you.
Yeah.
But yeah, then you go back and then Walter and then Souness. It's kind of, there's a theme. And when we spoke around, I think I was on the pod prior to announcement. It was almost a case of what is it that we'll be looking for from our next Rangers manager, and he's delivering on what we said that we wanted. Do you know what I mean? We wanted somebody that spoke like a winner, felt like a winner, had an aura when he went in. I love him on the line. He tore the arsehole out of one of the fourth officials over a decision. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that you don't want someone who's just going to be ranting and raving, but somebody who can do that in the right way. He obviously played at a good level. He was a captain. He was a leader. And that's very much what we've been missing. I mean, you could argue, Gio was a leader in a World Cup final and he was captain of a team, but he was more of a lead. He was more of a Tavernier type captain, leading by example. And we won't go down the John Lundstram's comments on Tavernier. That's probably another pod with him being unfair criticism and a man mountain. But the point probably stands the same. He's just give us the club back. I know it sounds a bit dramatic, but he's give us that good feeling back, and I genuinely believe he'll be doing all that he can behind the scenes to kind of turn that round. There's no arrogance. There's definitely no arrogance there. It's almost a case of he's there to be shot down, and he kind of puts himself in that position with the way that he holds himself. And it's almost a case of, right, things aren't good, things aren't perfect. And I get the impression with it, it'll never will be. You'll always be striving for better and striving for more, which I don't think we can ask too much more from a Rangers manager. So no, he's a cracking start, and again, he's got us looking forward to games again, as opposed to worrying about watching things through your fingers. So yeah, roll on tomorrow.
I'll stick with you, JB, because I'm curious to know what you think. I felt we found the trip to Prague quite difficult, particularly first half. Jack Butland keeps him with a couple of really good saves. Not for the first time this season, but big moments, big goalkeepers. I'll say it again, that's what he's there for. That's his job. How do you feel about the match tomorrow night, them coming to our place? Where are you? I assume you'll be up for it, of course, but I just wonder if you fancy us strongly in our own place in Europe. I tend to always feel that.
Yeah, I'm up there tomorrow, so half-day holiday up there with me dad, Brian and wee Colin, so we're heading up around lunchtime, so yeah, if anyone's kicking about for a pint pre-match, then give us a shout, but we're, I think it was an interesting one, Prague away, because we were a little bit rabbit in the headlights to start with. I don't think we were expecting them to come at us as quickly as what they did, and what you've always got to remember as well, it's a step up in quality, do you know what I mean? So when you're up against certain teams, I think it was at Hibs the week before we played them. With all due respect, it's Hibs. Do you know what I mean? They can cause a problem on the day, and they tend to cause a problem when we go away from home. A lot of that I do think is psychological, but it's they came at us, and fair play to them. The teams aren't there to lie down to Rangers just because we've turned up. They certainly weren't intimidated by us. They tried to get their crowd on side. They tried to make it hostile. They got in our faces. They were very aggressive. But I was talking to my dad earlier, but he made a really good point in the fact that they tired because they put so much into that first half. Yeah, and one thing I don't think they had, unlike us, we had better players come off the bench than what went off. Whereas you flip it to them, they looked really poor when they brought their substitutions on. So we might have to be patient tomorrow, as much as we want all guns blazing and 1-0 up after a couple of minutes. If we can get that, great, because the fans will run with that. But we just might need to, a wee bit of patience and hopefully a good European night under the lights. I know their top goal scorer's back, but they have got 3 players out who missed last week's game. They played in the first leg from what we read the other day. So, I just think they really struggled with Danilo's movement. I think after obviously Dessa's being relatively static, Danilo coming on just caused them all sorts of problems. They didn't know whether they were coming or going. So if we can get at them early doors and get the early goal, there's no doubt the ground will be bouncing. But it just needs 3 points tomorrow. If we can get 3 points tomorrow, Limassol at home, we can relax and bet us a wee bit ahead of the cup final as well. So
Yeah, listen, I think it's going to be an interesting game tomorrow night. As far as team selections concerned, I actually think it almost picks itself. I think he'll obviously go Butland, Tav, Goldson. I wouldn't be at all surprised. Is Balogun in the European squad?
No.
He won't play. Ben
so.
Davies will surely start as the left centre half tomorrow. Barisic will start at left back, I would suspect.
Yeah.
Lundstram, Jack, Sima, Lammers, Cantwell, and Danilo. I can't see him doing much different from that, Reese. I don't know if there's anyone else that you would swap out in that 11.
It's hard because automatically there is people that I would bring in and swap out, but then you need to remember they're injured, they're not on the list, they're whatever. And I can only imagine that's the sort of turmoil he's going through most days.
Yeah.
But I think that does probably sound like our strongest 11. I would be interested to see how Cantwell starts. Given the weekend, he's maybe just not had the great start that he would have liked at the weekend, and maybe been taken off early for Scott Wright, possibly what's going to kick him on a wee bit.
Yeah. The Cantwell thing at the weekend was really quite bizarre for me. I did think, I still think he was taken off because he got that stupid yellow through no fault of his own, which I think we all agree with, but I did put him on a bit of a slippery slope for the rest of the game. Shows a red card, he misses the final, and he's one of our most influential players. However, he's not been at it so far this season for me, and he's one of the players that we do need to be at it. I'm really interested to see how Sam Lammers gets on after scoring that cracker at Dens Park last week. It was something that he builds on. I didn't think he was particularly great at the weekend, but I'll be interested to see if he looks to build on that beautiful strike at Dundee. JB, prediction for you for tomorrow? I do want to jump on the fans forum stuff shortly. So prediction from you, JB, in the first instance for tomorrow night?
I'll go with a 1-0 win.
Which will take 3 points. We'll absolutely take it. Puts us in a good position in the group. That's what it's all about. Reece, yourself?
1-1. I think it was quite interesting today to hear Clement talking about maybe in hindsight sometimes a draw looks okay because it helps you progress. And I think with all the remaining results to go, if we draw with Prague again, would I be right in saying we're still ahead or equal to them in points?
It will cause a problem on the head-to-head because the away goals then kick in. So if it's head-to-head, I'm not sure if it goes to goal difference or head-to-head, but if it goes to head-to-head, they'll naturally beat us then because they'll beat Limassol home and away, no danger.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I just think possibly we could end up with a shock even in Betis. I really think he is taking it one game at a time though, so I'll predict one each, but I think his attacking mentality for that next game, that's all, might see us win it, and hopefully it does.
So I've been doing this podcast now for 5 years, and Reese's came on tonight and stunned me with the quote, "We should be fair to Aberdeen," and then secondly, he has quoted a draw at home in a European match at Ibrox.
No, I was saying we should have gave the SFA a bit more credit for no listening to Aberdeen. Aberdeen wanted 50-50 until they sold as many as they could, and the SFA just didn't even give them the chance to do it.
It's a big night, JB, is all I can say. Listen, I do want to speak a little bit before I let you disappear in the night about the CEO fans forum. Lots of things that came out of that, which we'll cover. First one that I want to speak about is the imminent progress, or what seems to be imminent progress, or a bit of movement, JB, on the director of football / technical director role. James Bisgrove, given the impression that there may be a bit of movement in that over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, no, it was interesting the way that came about. Obviously, it's got a wee bit quiet. I think because Clement started so well, we've all kind of collectively forgot about it. I think there was a wee bit of a clamour prior to the appointment. I definitely think if we can get somebody in now with a view to start obviously getting to work ahead of January, I think it'd be really good. But yeah, sounds like conversations are going quite well. Interesting, we haven't had a lot of names mentioned. There was initial flurry, wasn't there, of Paul Jules' son and obviously the boy that was at Monaco with Clement. That's all gone a bit quiet. Obviously, he was linked with Manchester United, wasn't he? His name just escaped me.
Yeah.
Who was it?
Paul Mitchell.
Paul Mitchell, yeah. So that one does feel a wee bit realistic and a wee bit probably over-ambitious. But no, it sounds like there's conversations being had. I think if we can get the right person in, we'd rather take our time than rush that one. Because at the end of the day, if that person's going to be the cornerstone of the footballing department, you've got to get it right. You're almost better burning through 2 or 3 managers than what you are burning through 2 or 3 directors of football. Do you know what I mean? To get this one right. But the fact that the director of football will be starting with a good manager to start with. So yeah, we'll watch this space with that one.
Do you know, I think JB, sorry, Scott. JB, I think you're quite right there about the time taking to appoint this guy, because even if you just look at Ajax, now we all seen what Ajax were last season. They lost Mark Overmars last season, brought in Sven Mislintat, who's subsequently been fired, and I think we all know the disaster that Ajax are in. Their business. He spent 15 million, a boy from Middlesbrough. So that appointment, I think, it is crucial.
Aye, definitely, yeah.
I think I'd seen something, and the guy, I think there's a chap, Alex Inglethorpe, who's been mentioned or linked with it as well.
Was he involved at Liverpool?
Yeah,
I think he was in some way, shape or form, yeah.
Yeah, definitely at youth level, yeah.
So I think it's one of these roles, it's almost obviously going to be a guy that's just going to appear out of nowhere, and he'll suddenly be the technical director, and he'll just drift in, he'll plant his backside down the chair, and he'll just go for it, which is probably what you want. And JB's absolutely right. I think because things have been so good since the new manager came in, largely everyone's quite happy and everyone's quite pleased with how things are looking in the back garden, to be perfectly honest with you. Reece, one of the things that came up as well was the possibility of expansion to the stadium. Scott Hammond, who's watching us on Facebook, is referring to these positive plans, and I don't think it's talking about sort of capitalising on those pictures that we've seen on Twitter where the stands go 6, 7, 8 tiers higher. I think it's more just trying to squeeze in probably more seats in areas that it's possible. I don't know what you stand on maybe trying to expand the stadium, Reece. And Reece has disappeared, so I'll ask you that question, JB. I don't know if you think that it's something that, over the fullness of time, it's something we could potentially do. Would you be interested in seeing a bigger Ibrox, for example?
Yeah, I can take that, Reece, if you're back in, or do you want me to go take it?
Sorry, lads, the laptop went into flight mode there for whatever reason and turned into Wi-Fi and everything. Honestly, I have no idea how it happened, but I think it would be interesting to see an expanded Ibrox. I think it's probably a really good signal that the club's beginning to look to develop as a club overall. I think we've all seen the commercial aspect and the commercial growth, and we're quick to moan about selling our best players or parting their cash on 4 strips a season and stuff. But if you start to then see it being spent in aspects like that, then maybe it's something for the board to point to and go, well, it funded that, and my jails that people like to complain about helped fund this, and that's bridging that gap. And I think it would be really, really good for us, rather than, I know it's a listed building in the front of Ibrox, so there's limits to how much you can do with that. But even renovating around the sides, filling corners or whatever, then it's certainly something I'd love the club to crack on with, and there's no doubt we'd fill the capacity no matter what it is.
JB, stadium expansion, you in or out?
I'm in, but not at the expense of the team. Do you know what I mean? We're in a position at the moment where if you think about when we filled the corners in, we put the big screens in and stuff, that was 8 in a row. That's fine. Let's worry about the stadium once that trophy cabinet's getting used regularly. Do you know what I mean? The recent run of trophies has been totally unacceptable for the club. New Edmonton House, great, love it. I think it's an asset to the club. However, if somebody give me a choice of Edmonton House or a 30-goal a season striker, I know which one I'm taking right now. So without being too negative, we just need to make sure we're getting back on winning ways. Fisgro's not stupid. He knows that we'll like the thought of a bigger Ibrox, and he knows we'll like the thought. So he's probably playing that game a wee bit. Whether there's actually even any plans in place, it'd be interesting to see. Obviously, there's a lot of work going ahead with the disabled facilities. So I'd like to see them get that done first, deliver on that, and then worry about what the next project is for Ibrox. So, but yeah, it's good to be talking about.
Big thing for us all should be, as far as I'm concerned, and this is probably the last thing I'll say in the fans forum, unless we have anything else we want to go about, is that there looks to be a Walter Smith statue ready for the beginning of the new year. Something that I think as the Rangers support, we should all be absolutely hammering the board to make sure it happens then, as they have now said. Jamie, I'm interested to know where you stand in that. Walter Smith gave us some incredible days and nights and weekends and all the other things that support that. It's really important that his memory is properly remembered from now until forever, to be perfectly honest with you. They need to get this absolutely spot on.
Yeah, 100%. It's the word legend gets banged about, doesn't it, quite a lot, as we know. But there's certainly nobody bigger. I remember once criticising Walter at a European game. We were in a Chinese restaurant, and I remember criticising him because of the game the night before. It might have been Osasuna or something. I can't remember who it was. And I remember my big mate Hunter. He walked out the restaurant in disgust because I had the audacity to question him. But that just probably goes to show the respect that he's held. I've got to admit, I was probably in my young 20s at the time, so probably I was only used to Rangers winning. Do you know what I mean? So I was almost the case of, it's just what we do. It's probably not, and certainly probably my generation, it's not probably to look back and go, oh my God, how good was that? I had my first season ticket in '95, and there was guys like Gascoigne and Laudrup, and you think about the characters that he had to manage and be successful with them. It was absolutely unbelievable. He's might be out of sight like, but he'll never be out of mind. And I think having that type of representation at the club, if it wasn't going to be a stand named after him, I definitely think a statue is probably going to be the next best thing.
Reese, anywhere obvious that you think that a statue of Walter Smith should go?
I think there's pros and cons of probably every location as Rangers will have looked at. I think possibly at either of the gates, similar to like the John Gregg statue's location, might be a good option. Personally, just for the sake, because you know what they're like, I would put it indoors in the museum.
Yeah, 100%.
Personally, I would make sure it was indoors in the museum. As probably grim as it sounds, it's a way to monetize it as well and incentivize people going to the museum and stuff.
Yeah.
But I would love to see it outside like the John Gregg one. I just think for the security and the safety of the statue of such a man, I think you've got to prioritise the fact that once it's there, it's never moving, it's never damaged, and that's possibly why I would put it indoors, but just a personal choice. It could go anywhere else, and I think it's befitting of the man. I've always thought if it wasn't a statue, then I really like the idea of naming, see the kind of walkway from the subway.
Yeah.
There was like wee signs on the flagpole, the street lights on that said like Walter Smith Way.
Yeah.
I've always thought that would be a nice idea, but the statue, its location, I think, probably isn't that significant. It's just the fact that we get it done and we remember the guy for what he was.
100%, absolutely right. JB, one last thing. I know you were quite impressed with the gaffer's sort of cut of his conversation at the fans forum yesterday. Good to see him there in the first instance, and speaking so positively. One of the things I said, I don't have the quote in front of me, but he did say something along the lines of, he's very aware he's made the right decision by coming to Glasgow. It's listen, it's soundbitey. I get that. I know that. He's saying all the right things, we know, but he seems to be saying it, and we hope that from what we see, he's meaning it. He had a better opportunity to go to Saudi from a financial perspective. I think everyone's very aware of that. He maybe sees potential in the project, and I think it is a project that he's came into. Until he starts to bring in his own players, it will continue to be a project. But it was good to see him at the forum, and the way that he spoke, I thought was quite positive too.
Aye, definitely. I mean, I think one thing he's touched on pretty much every interview he's done is about that bond between the players and the players and the fans and the club in whole. Rangers fans are winners. Do you know what I mean? As much as things haven't been great over, and that's probably why I heard so much in the fact that we haven't been success. We haven't been anywhere near good enough in recent years, as I said earlier. So I think the fact that he's coming in and he wants to win and he wants to be surrounded by winners. Winners breed winners, and winners like to surround themselves with winners. And the fact that he is a winner, I don't know how many times I'm going to say winner in a sentence, but he's definitely he feels like one of us already. Do you know what I mean? You can feel as if he's kicking the ball for you, and that's one thing that I think we almost felt under Gerrard. We had some disappointments under Gerrard, but we could see where it was going. But we also felt as if we weren't playing well, there was a fan in the changing rooms basically kicking arses. Whereas I do feel under Mark Warburton, Gio, Kashinya, Beale, it was almost a case of who's doing the shouting in there? Is it the players shouting at the manager, or is it the manager shouting at the players? Whereas I definitely think we're having that. But in terms of attendance, I've got to say, when the fans, my only gripe about the fans forum is the fact that there's zero opportunity for anyone outside of pretty much Glasgow to attend, unless you're really willing to put the miles in. They tend to do them on a midweek. Now you might go, well, we're a Glasgow club, so therefore do it at a time that is best for people in Glasgow. Then great. Don't get me wrong, you can put your name forward and you can put the effort in to do it. It would be nice to see the club potentially do like a remote one. I mean, Teams is the new. I've been on Teams calls with 1,200 people. Do you know what I mean? And people contributing, and there's ways you can manage that. But fair play. I thought it was just going to be a tick box exercise that might dissolve, and they'll just maybe send somebody from a particular department. But yesterday, I had the chief Brisgrove, I had the commercial officer, the financial officer, director of football operations, the head of fan engagement, customer service manager, head of retail and events, and the manager. So that might be a light bulb moment at the start, and to go, you know what, if we work with these fans, they'll buy into us more. But yeah, no, fair play to the club for that, because they come under a lot of grief, rightfully so at times, but massive fair play to them, especially if you compare the relationship between our fans and maybe a club not a million miles away from us. We're not getting banned from anywhere, are we, by our own club? So all good.
Do you know, I think you can whisper it, but I think you can almost see a senior management team at Rangers that is all pushing in the correct, proper direction. Right. And I think it's been a long time since we've seen that. Listen, that'll just about do us for tonight. I'm conscious of time. Always good to have you on. Thanks for coming on, mate. Appreciate it.
All good. Yeah, 3 points tomorrow.
Fingers crossed, mate. And Reece, always good to see you as well, buddy. Thanks for coming on. Thanks for coming back.
Cheers, mate. I know I don't know how that happened, but hopefully my prediction's a wee bit off and we get a win tomorrow night to secure it.
Absolutely, mate. 3 points.
Sorry, Scott, I've just got one more. I've got a big mate, Bruce in Belfast, who isn't doing too well at the moment, so he's in hospital. So just a bit of a shout out to him. Speedy recovery from everyone. This is Ibrox.
Absolutely, best wishes to Bruce. Yeah, I hope his recovery is quick. If you're not following us on social media, please do. As I've said before, if you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook, thanks for doing that. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment, share with your friends everything that we're doing, and put your notifications on, and you will get a wee notification every time we go live. We're available right across social media on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, all the obvious places you can check us out there. I am back on Sunday night with the Sunday session where we review the Livingston match, which should be quite exciting. A nice opportunity across at the Tony Macarona against David Martindale's Livingston. He'll be happy regardless come Sunday night, let's be brutally honest. Listen, good luck to Rangers tomorrow at Ibrox, and good luck at the weekend as well. Thanks to JB and Reece for joining me tonight, and until Sunday, thanks for watching. Good night.